You've always felt different, like you've carried more than your fair share, like you were sent here. And you were. You came to help, and it was never supposed to be easy. You might not remember signing up for this. You might not even fully believe that you did. But some part of you, deep down in your core, has always known that this life isn't random, that your presence here is purposeful, that despite the chaos and confusion of the human experience, there's a mission behind the madness. A reason why, even in your darkest moments, something inside kept urging you forward. Dolores Cannon called it the 3 waves of volunteers. According to her, souls began incarnating on Earth in waves, particularly after the trauma of World War II. The planet was crying out for help, and souls like yours answered the call. The first wave, the pioneers, born in the decades following WWII, these individuals often came into the world in the 50s and 60s. They were different, sensitive, empathic. They felt things deeply, often too deeply. They didn't quite fit into the world around them, not because they were broken, but because they were built for something else. They didn't like conflict. They avoided crowds. Many of them looked at the way society functioned and just couldn't understand how people accepted such violence, such indifference, such cruelty. They often struggled with depression, not because they were weak, but because the density of this world was so stark compared to where they came from. They were the forerunners of a quiet revolution, not one fought with weapons or words, but with vibration. If you've always felt like you were on the outside looking in, not because you lacked anything, but because you saw too much, felt too much, knew too much, you might be one of them. Many first wavers never felt truly at home, not in their families, not in their communities, not even in their own bodies. It wasn't just shyness or introversion. It was a profound feeling of disconnection from a world that seemed to run on frequencies they couldn't quite tune into. But that disconnection, that sensitivity, was never a weakness. It was a sign of where they came from. You were sent here to help, to shift the frequency, to anchor a vibration that could make this world feel a little less heavy for those who would follow. Your life may have felt heavy because it was, not by accident but by design. You volunteered to come to a planet dense with fear and pain and bring light into it. That light wasn't always dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it showed up in quiet, subtle ways. A moment of kindness, a word of encouragement, the energy of compassion you carried with you into every space. You may have found yourself acting as an emotional anchor in chaotic households, as the peacekeeper in toxic environments, or simply the one others leaned on when their own lives began to crumble. If you were the one everyone turned to for support, if you found yourself holding space for others long before you even knew what that meant, if you gave until it hurt and then kept giving, you were living your mission. Many volunteers became caregivers, healers, teachers, spiritual seekers. You didn't choose these roles for the money or the recognition. You chose them because something in your spirit couldn't turn away from those in pain. You saw the hurt in others and felt it in yourself, sometimes too deeply, sometimes to the point of breaking. But even when you were breaking, you were helping, even when you didn't realize it. You may have sat in silence with someone grieving, or offered comfort without needing to fix anything. You may have intuitively known when someone was hurting, even if they smiled on the outside. This was never just empathy. This was soul memory at work. You remembered how to bring light into darkness, even if you couldn't explain why or how. There were moments when you felt invisible. You watched others achieve milestones, celebrate victories, and receive praise while your contributions went unnoticed. You wondered if you were making any difference at all. But the thing about volunteers like you is, your work has never been about recognition. It's about resonance. It's about raising the frequency in rooms that would otherwise remain dim. The path of a volunteer is rarely easy. You chose to incarnate without memory of your purpose, without a roadmap, without certainty. That takes courage most people can't comprehend. And still, you kept going. You kept choosing to show up even when your body ached, even when your heart was weary, even when your mind was filled with doubt. You walked through physical illness, mental health struggles, emotional isolation, spiritual crises. You carried wounds that didn't seem to heal, questions that didn't have answers, dreams that never materialized the way you hoped. And yet, you stayed. You stayed and kept holding the light, kept planting seeds, kept whispering truth into a world that didn't always want to hear it. You faced ridicule for your beliefs. Maybe people rolled their eyes when you talked about energy or intuition. Maybe they called you too sensitive, too soft, too unrealistic. But you never stopped believing in the power of love, connection, and unity. And that belief changed more than you'll ever know. This is the hallmark of a volunteer soul. Transmutation. You turn pain into healing. You turn judgment into acceptance. You turn fear into light, not because it's easy, but because it's who you are. Let's talk about the energy work you've done without realizing it. You may have walked into a room and felt the tension immediately. You may have absorbed people's emotions without understanding why. That's not just empathy. That's frequency anchoring. You were stabilizing energy. You were acting as a tuning fork for others to find balance. And yes, it's exhausting. That's why so many of you are fatigued, not from laziness, but from soul labor. You've likely had periods of deep isolation, not just loneliness, but soul solitude. Times when everything was stripped away, relationships, jobs, identities, and it felt like nothing made sense. That void, that darkness, it wasn't a punishment, it was a reset, a recalibration, a sacred cocoon before the next emergence. You may have watched people move forward in life, marriage, promotions, social success, while you felt like you were standing still. But what if you weren't behind? What if you were on a different track entirely? One that isn't measured by outward milestones, but by inner expansion, by vibrational shifts. What if your stillness was its own kind of progress? Now let's be honest. There were times you wanted to give up. You looked at the world and felt defeated. The wars, the greed, the injustice. You thought, what's the point? And yet something inside wouldn't let you quit. That's not coincidence. That's your higher self, your soul team, your guides, whispering, stay. It matters, even when you can't see it. You've likely felt drawn to healing, not just for others, but for yourself. You've explored meditation, energy work, astrology, breath work, past lives, shadow work. You weren't just into spirituality. You were remembering your toolkit. You were activating what you already knew in other lifetimes. Some of you became healers, intuitives, lightworkers. Others of you healed through art, music, writing, presence. Not all healing looks the same. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is listening, witnessing, loving without conditions. And that's what you've done, again and again, often without credit or recognition. But here's the truth. The universe keeps receipts. Every time you loved when it was hard. Every time you forgave when it wasn't deserved. Every time you stayed when you wanted to leave. Every time you held light when it would have been easier to go numb. It counts. It builds. It shapes the collective field. You might never know how many lives you've touched, but you have. That person who didn't take their life because you smiled at them. That child who felt safe because you saw them. That friend who healed because you believed in them. You are a miracle in motion. And here's the most beautiful part. Your mission isn't over. It's evolving. You're not just here to suffer. You're here to remember joy, to reclaim your light, to enjoy this earth, not just endure it. As more awaken, your role will shift. You will become a guide not by force, but by frequency. People will be drawn to your calm, your clarity, your authenticity, not because you preach, but because you are. You've walked the fire and didn't burn out. That's the kind of strength the world needs now. So please rest when you need to. Protect your energy. Say no when your body says no. You don't need to save everyone. You only need to be yourself and trust that it's enough. You were sent here to help. And help you did, but now you also get to receive. You get to heal, to create, to love, to thrive. That's not selfish, that's sacred. Let's go deeper. You see, volunteering for this Earth experience wasn't a casual choice. It wasn't spontaneous. It was a soul-level agreement made across dimensions and lifetimes. Before you were born, before your name, before this body, you knew the nature of this mission. You saw the density, you felt the suffering, and still you said yes. That choice, that yes, was an act of divine service, of courage, of love. And maybe, just maybe, you're hearing this at the exact right time, not by accident, not as a coincidence, but as a soul reminder, a gentle awakening, a cosmic nudge to say, you're doing better than you think. All those moments you doubted yourself, the ones where you looked in the mirror and wondered, am I making a difference? The answer is yes, even if no one told you, even if the results weren't immediate. You are part of a vast, interconnected soul network, and when you heal, the web shifts. When you love, the fabric strengthens. When you simply be, in your truth, in your tenderness, in your light, you radiate more change than 1,000 speeches. Let's not forget the ripple effect. That child who watched you stand in your authenticity, they'll grow up knowing it's safe to be themselves. That coworker who felt your calm during a crisis, they'll carry that steadiness into their family. That friend who opened up to you for the first time, you helped them break a cycle. This is the legacy of a volunteer soul. Quiet revolutions, invisible victories, sacred shifts. And no, it's not always glamorous. You've probably never had a parade in your honor, no standing ovations, no headlines. But the universe applauds in different ways. The synchronicities, the angel numbers, the moments when help arrives out of nowhere. That's your soul team saying, we see you, we've got you, keep going. So as this message closes, let this truth settle deep into your heart. You didn't come here to suffer, you came to transform. You didn't come to fit in, you came to elevate. You didn't come to be perfect, you came to be present. And you didn't come alone. Look around. Listen closely. You'll find others like you, old souls with young eyes, tired hearts that still believe, people who have been through darkness and still choose light. That's your soul family. You're not alone, and you never were. This earth is shifting. The old ways are falling apart. And yes, it's chaotic, it's uncomfortable, but it's also sacred, because something beautiful is being born. And you helped build the foundation for it. So thank you for every sleepless night, every deep breath, every time you chose love over fear. You were sent here to help, and help you did. Now it's time to live, to laugh, to rest, to play. That too is divine. And if this message stirred something inside you, if it brought tears or peace or recognition, know that it wasn't just a script. It was a soul call, a reminder from one traveler to another. You are the light. You always were, and you're right on time. So subscribe, stay connected. Let's keep remembering together.